This story is true, and it happened to me on April 2017 in Caracas. My then girlfriend is now my wife, and I had been staying at my mother in law's apartment for a few weeks because my mother's apartment where we lived was being remodeled at that time. For some context, the apartment we were staying is located on the fourth floor of a relatively small 10-floor building, which was positioned right in the front of the city's main highway. I say small because there are very tall buildings in my city, which were as tall as 40 or 50 floors, and the people that lived in these buildings suffered greatly whenever the elevators did not work. Imagine going up and down the stairs for 50 or 60 floors. That's a lot of exercise for one day. So there were a lot of things I had to get used to in place. Chief among them was hearing the sound of cars, trucks, bikes, flat tires, damaged exhaust pipes, and occasional gunshots that came from the poor neighborhoods that were close to my girlfriend's home, which could be heard during the day and night. In contrast, my mother's neighborhood were usually very quiet, especially at night, so I had to change my sleeping habits a bit. So I usually went to bed quite late at night, usually around midnight or 1 a.m. This apartment was smaller than my compartment, and it was located on the other side of the city, but I did not care about those things as long as I could get a good night's sleep next to my wife, since I suffered from insomnia sometimes. The first time I came to my wife's apartment, I noticed there was a small hill with a huge tree, some medium small-sized plants, bushes, and a patch of grass, which were right next to the highway, and this seemed a little creepy to me at night. On that hill, I noticed there was a small makeshift aluminium shack. I thought that it was a little funny, and I thought to myself, well, that's weird. Maybe some hobo or homeless person lives there. If he does, he must be crazy to be living there. On the first 2 nights I stayed there, even though I could only hear the sounds of the highway, it took me a while to fall asleep. Fortunately, everything was okay, and I was able to get a good night's sleep on those 2 days. But the third night, as I much as wanted to be the exact same, it was quite different than first. I remember it was late at night. I think it was midnight or even later, and I was almost sound asleep. I was listening to some horror stories on my cell phone and fall asleep too, just like I always did. Suddenly I was startled by ear-piercing screams of some man or woman hurling a string of fucking bombs and other curses at somebody or something else. This woke me up right away and scared the hell out of me at the same time. I thought to myself, what or who the hell was that? And I shook my wife's shoulder and told her, hey honey, did you hear that? And she was still asleep but responded, hear what? No, it's nothing, go back to bed, honey. However, I heard the curses again, so I decided to investigate what the heck was going on. I got up from my bed, rubbed my eyes, put on my slippers, and walked slowly and quietly out of the bedroom towards the balcony, where I could clearly see the highway and small hill next to it. And now I could still hear the curses more clearly, and it sounded like the voice of a deranged man, and I thought to myself, maybe I was right, and there indeed is a homeless person living on that metal hut. I was now standing shirtless in my boxers and slippers on the dark balcony looking to that hill, where I saw that metal hut come the first day in my wife's apartment. Weirdly enough, I was able to see a small campfire and a barefoot man coming out of the shack, who had long, disheveled hair and a long bushy beard. He was shirtless and wearing torn pants that was almost destroyed. He came out of the small shack. He was smoking a cigarette, or God only knows what drug he was taking. He was standing in that dark hill, screaming his lungs out and cursing aloud for some reason, while he was looking towards the highway. I thought this man must be crazy, getting high or drunk enough to be yelling at the passing cars or the people or dogs that were all the way inside the other side of the highway. This made me feel terrified, and I asked myself, what in the holy hell is that guy saying isn't cold? Because of this racket, there was some neighborhood dogs barking at this man's direction. I thought it was really strange for someone to scream so much, especially this late at night. Unfortunately for me, my mother-in-law was a night owl like usual and slept in the living room, so she turned on the kitchen light out of the blue to get some water and went back to sleep, which reflected a little bit towards the balcony. I turned my head around and I was a little blinded by the glare of light, but at the same time I was scared that this man would be staring at me. In that moment, I hid crouched below the window so the man could not see me, but I was horrified when I saw this man walk to the fire and angrily put out the fire with his bare feet, turn his head around the highway to look out at the wall of the building, and all while he was still cursing out loud, I thought to myself, well, maybe he's having a bad trip or something. Suddenly, this crazy guy looked up at the building wall. He walked until he was right in front of it. He yelled, "I can't take it anymore and the voices are driving me crazy," and started to repeatedly bash his head into the wall until his head was bleeding while he yelled, "Get out of my head." The sound he made was terrifying. When he was done, he touched his head with his right hand and cleaned the blood on his chest. Now he looked crazier than ever. Out of the blue, the guy looked up and noticed I was staring at him, so he yelled at me, "What the hell are you looking at? Mind your business, you idiot." Therefore, I was scared to death. I threw myself to the balcony's ceramic floor. I winced at how cold it was and hid there for a while. I thought to myself, out of sight, out of mind, right? This crazy guy kept screaming his curses at me. I decided it was enough for me, and I quietly crouched back to the bed. I felt horrified about what I saw, and I could not sleep that night, since all I could hear were my mother-in-law's snores and the guy's screams until 2 a.m. The next day, I felt extremely tired because I was not able to rest the night before. I told my wife about what had happened, so she told me, "Yeah, at some point you get used to that crazy guy and his screams," but she didn't believe me what the guy bashed into his head in the wall and almost killed himself. So it dawned on me, what if I can hear these guys' screams tonight again? Should I call the cops on this guy? But I decided not to do it. It's because my country police are basically useless, so I still don't know what to do about this crazy screaming man. His awful screamings still give me nightmare, but I know I will never look out of the balcony window at night again.